Thank you, all of you, for being with us today. We want to start this. And of course, let me start by thanking our beautiful panelists as we celebrate women in leadership in Dallas County. So let's give them a big round of applause. I also want to thank our Chief Equity and Inclusion Office Director, Mr. Jason Romaine, for putting this together. Happen without our county administrator, Mr. Daryl Martin, and his team. I see Mr. Gordon Heichel and Mr. Reed here as well. Thank you for being here. I also want to remind the audience that you will be able to ask questions. So if we don't ask what you want to hear, start thinking about it. You will have an opportunity to ask them as questions as well. And of course, I want to remind everyone that this is being televised live stream, I should say, via YouTube. So you are, on camera. So with that being said, I'm going to ask all our panelists to turn on your mic. It has to have the green light. And let's go ahead and start this. The first question I will ask to Judge Tina Ju Clinton, and it's going to be the same for all our panelists. The first one is, what motivated you to step up and run for office, and how did you navigate it, the power structures early in your career versus now, and that you have a more formal role? So, Judge Clinton.
I think the first thing that really caused me to run for office was that I saw a particular court. That court was languishing in many ways. There were misdemeanor cases that had sat in that court for over 5 years. There were over 360 jury trials that were pending, that were not moving. And it truly is a sense that the citizens of Dallas deserve better than that. You deserve a judge who is in the courtrooms. You deserve a judge who is working hard to move the cases so that if a trial needs to be had, a trial needs to be had. And if you need a judge there in order to help these cases along, a judge needs to be available. And so looking at the lack of work that was occurring in that court, I truly felt like someone needed to step up. And the reason why I decided that I could do that was I had the background, I had the training, I had been a prosecutor, I'd been a defense attorney. And in addition to that, in all of Dallas County, even in the year of 2009 and 10, when I started running, there was not a single judge who had been elected on the criminal side that looked like me. And I believe that we are better and stronger for diversity. Not only was I qualified, I brought a net plus, and that is the diversity. I don't want anyone to assume that what we're talking about here today is mere diversity. I truly believe that everyone on this dais, and many of you, are truly the most qualified person. But being the most qualified person and bringing diversity to the table, that's worth talking about. And I truly thought that that was something that I could offer not only to the bench, but also to the citizens of Dallas County. And for those who had never seen an Asian American on the bench, and what we could offer as community members to this country, to this community. So that was the reason why I decided to run.
Thank you. Judge Huff?
Kind of similar to what Judge Clinton said, I felt that there was a need for diversity, and we think of diversity and we automatically think race. Yeah, one, I was a Black woman, yes, and this position was typically held by white men. That's one thing, but also I thought there needed to be diversity in terms of age. And so when I ran, I was 34 years old, and I had a lot of people tell me it's not your time. You need to wait a little bit longer. But I had had tons of experience working as both a defense attorney and a prosecutor. I'd had over 100 jury trials, and I knew I could do the position some service. And so I decided it was time for me to run. And I ran because I wanted to see not only the bench be reflective of the community that we serve, but also, let's be honest, a lot of people coming before us on the bench looked a lot like me. And they needed someone there that was going to care. And so I decided it was time for me to step up and do such. And I think the second part of this question was essentially, how do we navigate the power structures? I started in a position where I was not in a leadership role. I was working for an office, an elected official. And so I had to recognize that there was a chain of command that I had to answer to. And so I was respectful to that chain of command. And I knew how to respectfully dissent when I disagreed with the chain of command. And so when I turned into a position of being in leadership, one thing I did was I tried to be the leader that I wanted to have. And so I thought about how I wanted people to listen, how I wanted the leaders to take advice from someone that may not have been in the position they're in, but has some input to offer. And so I allow people to have that space and time with me. And so I think that's something, and I do have some prosecutors that have been in my court before that I hope will say that, you know, if they have something that they want to bring to the table, they want me to consider in terms of how I run my court and the administration, that I'm open and I'm an open ear, because I do think that we all benefit from diversity. And that means not everyone that looks like you, not everyone that's the same age as you, not everyone that comes from the same background as you. And so that's what I thought I could bring to the bench, and I did that.
So how much time do I have? So thank you so very much for the invitation here to be a part of this conversation. I have to say that first. And thinking just quickly how I could shorten this conversation. You hear a lot of times that people say, well, you know, I've been that way all my life. And I probably have been, have had the mindset always of being an advocate. And I think quickly, I go back to, I'm from Austin, Texas originally, and I attended Blackshear Elementary School. And I remember, and I'm always reminded by my friend who's now deceased, who said, you know, I would always get in trouble for trying to protect someone else. And so I remember getting into, I guess, disagreement with my teacher, Mrs. Van Dyke. I believe she did have some issues, but I remember getting in front of the belt, because at that time we could be disciplined, but I grabbed the belt so that she wouldn't hit my good friend Lois Wilson. And so and that is ingrained in my mind. And so from that, you know, whether I'm, you know, going through college and I lost my board, my sorority board, because I was defending someone who didn't know all of their alphabets, and the sister was getting ready to do that. So I think I've always had to bear the brunt of advocating for others. And I'm comfortable with that. You know, if I choose to get into a fight, it's because I can handle the heat. But I do know that, back quickly to Austin, where Deacon Houston said I was supposed to be a pastor, uh, because I, you know, would love to go to Sunday school and that type of thing. But and every now and then around the councils, you hear someone say, "Well, amen," or she's preaching. But that's just the nature of who I am. So in terms of how I arrived in Dallas, I'll come out of southeastern Oklahoma State because we dealt with a lot of isms there, particularly racism. And if you Google Durant, Oklahoma, and look at some history, you know, they have a long history of hanging folks from the trees. I was shocked. And I got there, and I'm going to talk about how I got there. But I remember catching the bus there, and the driver said, well, you know, when you got ready to get out the bus, where are you going? You going to the college? Well, they knew you weren't going anywhere else because no black folks living in town. So, you know, so I began to hear all these things, you know, being in the store and a little girl walking up, you know, like it was going to come off. She didn't know. And, you know, just having those, you know, opened my eyes, even when I attended Concordia Lutheran College, where I had a scholarship my first year out of Johnson High School. And there was so much racism in that era, in that surrounding of a Lutheran college, because of course we were limited in numbers. So I've been dealing with this issue of equity and racism. And now as I move on, it's equity, racism, now is sexism. And then I get into ageism, which is what I'm dealing with now, because folks say you're too old and we need somebody young and fresh. You know, you have to go through all that, but everyone has to go through that. But I will tell you, in Dallas, when we moved here from Houston, where I really loved when I got married, and I just hated Dallas because it felt so conservative and it seemed like folks were scared. And so I had an opportunity to work at Bishop Dunn High School. And today I walk in and I see one of my favorite students, Carmen Brown. Raise your hand, because when I looked at that smile, first I'm like, oh, okay. Because I tell you, she and Derek was in the corner always laughing with that same smile. So I knew the smile. But I love that experience there. But I remember Todd Robinson. You remember him? And I thought, what do y'all do here? I mean, who's active in this city? Because I come from that era in Houston where you had Linnell Cofer and all those folks in Houston. And so, I was ready to go. And I remember Todd Robinson said this: you need to find that man named John Wiley Price. That's how he talked. And at that time, commissioner wasn't commissioner. And then the other person he said, see, Todd was very active, and they were always, even at the Catholic school, as you ran into the same thing with equity issues. And, I was one of those advocates. And so they were always trying to, of course, put me in my spot some kind of way. And he said, the other man is from Hutch. You know who's Hutch? Royce West.
Okay.
So I started looking for these two individuals. And so first I found Commissioner Price. And so you asked me, how did I get involved? It was because of Commissioner Price. Now, he blushes a lot of time, but I have to tell him thank you while he still breathes. Because without him, I think I would be totally lost in terms of just knowing where to go and getting connected. And I watched him because I always marveled at him. Some of you all are too young to understand. You would be running all over town trying to hear him when he spoke. It didn't matter where he was, what you were doing, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because the brother can speak and he always had your attention. And so when I first started talking about running, because I was always interested in that fighting for people, Miss Arnold, you can't just wake up in the morning and decide you're going to run. And the first time I ran for a school board. And he has to give you a sermon and a speech. But he wrote that first check for me for $100 just to help me. And I have followed him. I admire him. He and Commissioner, Senator West, and Senator was an attorney at that time. He ran for, I think, DA or something. But the bottom line is this: both of those men, whenever I called them to come to my classroom, they were always there. We have a long relationship where they followed me from Bishop Dunn to Woodrow Wilson to the Yvonne A. Ewell Townview Magna Center. And so now I get a chance to be with them here in the political world. So navigating has been a challenge, but once again, thank you to Commissioner in particular, because he sometimes had to be working on the outside. And many times I didn't know what he was doing, but he worked it. And I know that where I am today is largely because of him and his advocacy. And he's always there, but he's going to make you work. Now, he is no freeloading. You have to work. But I appreciate everything he's done. And I'm going to continue to fight for people, fight for issues, fight for the community, and whatever is right and we're entitled to. And right now we're dealing with equity and the issues of, realistically, can people, they talk the talk, and when these around the horseshoe in the dais, and as soon as you try to implement those same policies on equity and inclusion that they supported, they start giving you pushback, because all of a sudden they have to have a reason that you can't really get all of what you're entitled to as a historically underserved community. And so the struggle continues, and we're going to continue to fight in that vein. But I did want to make sure I told a little bit of how I got here today. Thank you for listening.
Good. Judge Breedlove, same question.
So first, let me say, I think it's really encouraging to hear the stories of all of us and how we, as you used a question, stepped up to run for office. And I will tell you, it is probably one of the most daunting and terrifying decisions one can make, to put yourself on a ballot, particularly to run countywide, but even district-wide. It's a family decision. It's a personal decision. It's a professional sacrifice. And I love your comments. And by the way, we're both Austin girls, and that might be why we get each other. But none of us would be here without the confidence that was given to us by someone else. I will tell you that when I decided to run for office, this was in 2011, the reason that I even had the audacity to put myself on a ballot for judge countywide in Dallas was that a different judge came to me and said, I have seen you try cases in my court. You are incredibly prepared. You're academic. You're hardworking. And we need people on the bench who will bring your work ethic. And that comment to me, I immediately thought, have you lost your mind? But I listened to that, and I took that conversation home. I had a conversation with my parents. My mom was an elected official for 20 years, the first Latina ever elected in Travis County in the 80s. They understand the difficulty of politics, and I will tell you, she wasn't thrilled with the encouragement being given to me, because she knew how hard it is on a family to be political. But as you just said, I would not be here had I not taken that confidence someone else put in me. And Elba was, I will say, one of the first person that would say, Maricela, you'll make a great judge. Maricela, we have to go walk those houses. We walked, I don't know how many hundreds to thousands of houses, knocking on Spanish speaking individuals' doors who had never had a door knocked in their lives. I mean, the abuelitas coming out at 80 years old that like had my picture. I mean, I walked up to one house and she had it hung like I was like, some celebrity, because we were reaching people. And the Pauline Medrano, the Medrano family has believed in this grassroots. If you're gonna do this, you're gonna roll up your sleeves. This is not for the faint at heart. This is not a task that should be taken with some audacity to believe you are entitled to it. And by goodness, you better be willing to lose if you're willing to run.
Yep.
And I would not be here now serving as a judge on a district court, and now, don't know how it's happened, but now I'm on the Court of Appeals, literally living my professional dream, had I not run in 2011 with the confidence of other women who said, you need to do this. It's not going to be easy. You may not win, which y'all all know I did not. And thank God I didn't, because it made me a better public servant, a better lawyer, a better person. It made me a better, in general, professional, going through the practice of realizing that nobody has the audacity to believe that you are entitled to win. Just doesn't happen. But we do have the audacity to believe in ourselves, to put ourselves out there and know that there are others that have come before us, that will come after us, that will support us, that will believe in us, that win, lose, or draw are proud of us, because it is not easy. But the panel that you see up here would not look like this had it not been for our courage in ourselves and willingness to rise or fall. And those that are here just listening us that say, Mija, I've got you. I've got you. Don't worry about it. Give it your best. Be true to yourself. Do not lose focus of the reason you want to serve. I believe in the judicial system because I'm the kind of judge who loses sleep at night. And by the way, if you ever meet a judge that says that they don't lose sleep at night, they're not doing their job. Last week in particular, I had an oral argument. I commend my colleagues on the criminal bench. I'm learning this for the first time. And I had an oral argument last Wednesday. Truly, I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and I was crying. And my husband is like, what is going on? And I said, I just can't get this out of my mind. I cannot get out of my mind the responsibility placed on my shoulders to make decisions on things that are affecting children in our community. And shame on our community for letting them happen. But my goodness, I have to put my work ethic at the table to protect those children in the future. And that's what motivates public servants. It's not a robe. It's not a title. It's not the audacity of power. It's the humility of our community that requires those that do it for the right reasons. I told someone recently, I was at an event and I said, it dawned on me that the work that I'm doing has so little to do with me and what you see here today, the gray hair it's putting on my head. But I have a 13-year-old daughter who in herself is just a firecracker of confidence. And she always says, Mama, you went to George Washington, but I'm going to Harvard. And I'm like, girlfriend, go for it. And by the way, get a scholarship. She probably will. But I think to myself, I am writing opinions that will have my name on it, that one day she could just be in law school and say, my mom wrote that. My mom changed the way that we protect children and women and the elderly in our communities because she lost sleep at night and did the right thing. And so, this idea of what made you step up, I think the reason I decided to step up is I stopped worrying about me and I started realizing that we have to have community leaders that are willing to put themselves out there and do it for the right reason. And we have to have confidence in each other, those in this room. I now encourage young women who I've seen in my courtroom that are rock stars. I'll tell you, for example, Casa Hernandez, who ran for state rep and she didn't win. She tried the first case in my court after COVID and she knocked it out of the park. And I told her after, I said, you know, Cass, I remember being young in my 30s and trying a case. It is not easy, but boy, girlfriend, you've got it. You've got the confidence. And so I try to do the same thing and encourage young people to, put themselves aside and do the right thing and serve our community. So that's why I decided to do this. And I'm thankful to the community to let me to continue to do it as long as you'll let me.
Fabulous. And there you have it. The need for diversity, experience, challenge the establishment, change the racism, equity, responsibility, and leadership. That's what made these ladies run for office. And that is commendable. So now we have the second question, and that is, what are you passionate about? And what are the benefits to having women in leadership? Judge Huff, I'm going to give it to you, and we go the other way.
Okay. So there's a quote that I'm sure a lot of you have heard is that service is the price we pay for the time we have here on this earth. And so that is what I'm passionate about. I've spent my career being in public service, from being a criminal defense attorney, serving people that needed help in the criminal justice system, to being a prosecutor, helping those that couldn't help themselves. I was a prosecutor in the family violence division, giving voice to the voiceless a lot of times. And now being a judge, I feel that's still my same role. I feel like my job is to stand in the gap to protect the least, the last, and the lost. And if you have a judge on the bench that's doing criminal work, especially, that doesn't feel like that's their role, then you really need to consider someone else for that position. And so when I talk about what I'm passionate about, that is it. And that's followed me throughout my life. In terms of why we need women in leadership and how we benefit from that, I think women have a nurturing spirit just in our being. That's who we are. We care about the common person. We care about the well-being of others. And I think we all benefit from having someone who truly cares, who truly has a servant heart in positions of leadership.
Working Arnold?
So it's a number of reasons. And once again, I think we probably don't have enough time, but I think it's just on the whole note of diversity and inclusion. And because we are wired a little bit different, but when we're there with men in particular, it's a good balance. Can men nurture? Yes, they can. But women, I think we are wired that way. And I know that it helps a great deal just to bring a different kind of approach or strategy. Sometimes when you're in a relationship and the child gets that stern discipline, stern, a little bit more stern, because we can be stern too. And they get one thing maybe from the dad and they run to the mom because they need to have this little reassurance that everything is okay and they're not that terrible child that they felt like when they were being disciplined. But in this case, as we move forward, it's about that different perspective that we need, because if you look at how we are in terms of society, I think the stats was to show that women will cast their vote and become more engaged through that vote more often than men. But for some reason, we still have a ways to go because we still are not giving back the support to women all the time when they are out here running for office. And we will not, for some strange reason, put our vote of confidence with them. If we were doing that, we would not be dealing with the issues that we're dealing with now, like with the governor now who has the nerve to talk about removing DEI, and then you have him talking about women's rights and treating us just like we're rag dolls. And so I think it's important, but we have to become more aware and entrenched in who we are, the power that we actually have. And if we choose to use it, we can really revolutionize this city. Now, I used to, when I taught, I would always look at the quote, the struggle continue. You can't have any progress without a struggle. And so recently I was looking and I ran across Angela Davis because, that was one of my girls too, I would study. But she had this quote, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. And so I begin to think about that. That's how we should be as women in the roles that we take. I'm very proud of the women, like Sheriff Marion Brown, who's over here, and another strong sister will always have that beautiful smile. I'm so glad that she's here as well, to be, I think, the first African American as well. But I'm proud. I was proud of Mrs. Gully when she became a constable. And I see that. I see a lot of good first. It's good, but we need more of us. But we need more of us working together. I was surprised when to see all of you out here today. I'm not going to tell you those tales. When I saw these women here, I'm like, wow, who stays after work to hear us? I was like really impressed. But it means a great deal to me to see you all here today. It's good. And when you start calling names, you start tapping on toes. But I have to call out Sister Pauline Madrano as well, because when I came to Dallas and worked at Bishop Dunn, and I think I started a group, Ladies of Distinction or something, and we had a toy drive and all that. And I was reading about the Madrano family. And the first thing I did, I'm like, wow, I'm really impressed with this family. So what did we do? We went to the Marillac Center. I don't even know if y'all remember that. And we found Mr. Robert Madrano, so we could give him those toys. But what Pauline Madrano does is she always mentors. She always gives that advice. She always works with, like today when I came up, she said, okay, let's get this together. I'm like, okay, what is it I need to do? That's what we need to do. We need to be in these leadership, but not as a pretty doll and some little icon that's sitting there. You just said it. We put our life on the line. Folks get to talk about you. She thinks she's cute because she got this on. She wear this perfume. She drives that. She's sleeping with this person. They know all, they think they know all your business. And we deal with all of that when we really need to get to the point of why we are here. We're here to serve. We have a limited amount of time. So here on this earth. And so we need to bring about a change. So yes, there is value to us, but I believe we can raise the level of impact if we choose to do that, even starting today. So you all have made me extremely excited today because you didn't have to be here. You left. I know you didn't stay here just to eat, did you? But you chose to be here today after hours. So I appreciate that, but it is something that's on my heart and mind to continue to look at women in positions, and women in position and women of power are kind of two different things. And another woman I really like is Nancy Pelosi is my girl as well. But she exercises that power of that position. And that's what we need to do. So I didn't want to get really long-winded on it, but I've been toying with that since I became mayor pro tem, even council member. There are different standards for us. You know that, don't you? And if don't be a black woman, now you got several standards. Where you're mistreated, whether it's by white, it's the Dallas Morning News type. And guess what? People who look just like you will do the same thing. I'm going through that. So there's a lot of layers to that, but I did want to put that on you today, share that with you, because it's been on my heart in terms of when we're in those positions and in that seat, how we can be more effective and what is our real mission. And I always tell everybody, I know my assignment. I know my assignment. So my job and commitment is to fulfill that assignment so that, as you shared also, the children who come after you, the young children, your children, relatives will know that you were there for them. And so I'll stop there. Maybe if I get another question, I'll wrap that up. But it had been on my heart for a while. Thank you.
So I know we're short on time, and I think I pretty much explained that which I am passionate about, but I want to just echo one thing that is incredibly important. We have to make sure, though, that the progress we've made, the increase in diversity on a multitude of levels, doesn't just live with us. And so exactly what you said, we have to ensure that, when we have, in my case, young law students or young lawyers that come before my court, and I encourage partners to let them argue that motion, put them in front of the trial. We have to be the advocate for that person that's going to come after us, because it's incumbent upon us to do so. We can't live with the success that we, as marginal or so forth, that it has been in increasing diversity, the Dallas County sees even with this panel, because there's so much more to do. but we have to be active in ensuring that those that are coming, we've got young people here today that I'm certain would love to just have coffee and say, okay, can I take 15 minutes of your time and talk to you about, these particular professional challenges? And, we're all busy. And I will tell you, I'm the first to say that when I go to these things, I try so hard to build those relationships, but we have to make time for our youth, and we have to make time to mentor. I would not be here, I've said it, without the beautiful women in this room that mentored me, that believed in me. It would be audacity of me to say that I did it by myself. I've never done anything professionally by myself, and nor should we expect that of those that come after us. And so if we do anything, let's just leave with, some of you commented, a commitment to the next generation that will be good public servants with the right ethics and the right work ethic and the right knowledge and the right experience. I think, as Judge Clinton said, she didn't only want to be someone who looked different on the bench, she had the experience. But we have to make sure that those in the workplace that are women are getting experience. It is not fair. It is not fair for us to say, and this happens in court all the time. Excuse me for my bailiwick, but that's my courtroom. When young women aren't trying cases, but it's a cycle. They're not getting experience. And so therefore they can't try a case. And so therefore they don't get the experience. My goodness, someone just put them in front of the jury. Men make mistakes all the time. Yes. They get objections sustained all the time, except for Andy, not him. But it's okay. If a man can stand up there and make a mistake and lose a jury trial and still his bar card is intact, my goodness, let the woman get the same experience and enjoy it, But we have to be advocates to ensure that kind of level of experience, because otherwise, without experience, as Judge said, if you don't get your hands dirty and get to work, you'll never have the experience to be a public servant, because we don't need people there that don't know how to do the job. That's not what we're saying. We need people who have experience, who have work ethic, who've been mentored, and are willing to step up to the plate.
Thank you. Excellent. Amen.
So in addition to what all of the amazing panelists have said, I want to add the issue about systems. So what I'm passionate about is systems, getting to know them and then sharing my knowledge. Because here's the thing, if you have not been in this system, and it doesn't matter what system we're talking about, doesn't matter if it's a law firm, a DA's office, a judicial bench, if you don't know the systems, if you don't know how commissioner's court works, you can't come in and talk intelligently about wanting to take an office, about understanding how something gets done. And if someone won't share that information about that system with you, then you are already at a disadvantage to those people who have gone before you that do understand how that system and that institution works. And so I'm a systems nerd. I want to know how we get our courts funded. I want to know how we get technology into the courthouse. I want to know how we hire the people we hire. I want to know how the big thing that we call government works, so that not only can I navigate it, but so can you. And that information has to be gleaned, it has to be captured properly, and then it has to be disseminated for the rest of us to climb that ladder.
Excellent. And I know we're getting to the time for the audience to ask their questions. So in 1 minute, and I know I'm asking a lot, but what advice would you give to young women considering running for office? Mayor Pro Tem Arnold.
With advice, I think we've pretty much heard it. You need to do your research. You need to talk to people who are in that kind of that area. No, it's different than being on television. You need to get the facts and find out what it really entails. You're giving up your life. You're open. You can't, after a while, you can't come out in public like you used to, if you wore the raggedy jeans and those types of things. That if you come out, they're gonna talk about you real bad in certain neighborhoods. But you're an open book, and so you need to know that you're an open book and be prepared to be put on blast at any given time. And that, as you said, also you have to build up the strength to understand when to say no. You have to also build up the strength. You just don't get it. This is what we all need to know. Not everybody likes you. And they're not going to like you. And it's not your job to get up in the morning to make folks like you or love you. I'd always tell my student, I've got a dog, a husband, a dog, and children at home to love me. You're here to learn what I can give you. So I think that's much of what you need to know. Everybody's not gonna like you, and you just have to keep it moving. Do your job and keep it moving. That's the best I can do in a short period of time. There's more to it, but that's it.
Yes, Breedlove.
So I guess the first advice is first get a dog. 'Cause they're always hungry. You know, just practically speaking, if you're ever interested in running for office, go work a campaign before you do it yourself. There's no better training ground than going and learning the grassroots, how to be in a campaign. Go help out others. Learn the system. But also, it takes so much to get a campaign going. You know, you can't just say, well, you know, I think I'd be great at this, and so I think that people will vote for me. Well, I think that you're crazy because no one will do it if that's all you're going to do.
Right.
Go work a campaign and look at what it takes. Get your feet wet, and like I said before, get good mentors. And find people that are your moral compass. In my own personal experience, my father is my moral compass. John Moore, if I tell him something and he's like, Maricela, I don't know about that, then I know it's wrong. And you have to find people that you trust who are always going to hit you straight. Because, you know, like my dad says, once you become a public servant, you know, all of a sudden my 5 feet tall is real tall. You know, my jokes are a lot funnier. So you've got to navigate yourself to people that are going to hit you straight and that you trust and that are going to tell you what's right for you. And you've got to build that center structure before you engage in public office.
Excellent. Great advice. Judge Clinton.
So psychologically, there have been studies done about men and women and their different mode of getting to that decision about running for office. And here's an example. This actually came out of a textbook. It says a man will pass by in an airport and they hear the news that there is a vacancy for Chicago mayor. And they live in Chicago, and all of a sudden they go, oh, hey, you know, that was fortuitous that I heard about it. That means I'm supposed to run for mayor. A woman will have a very valued mentor, like Justice Breedlove, who will tell them, you are perfect for this. You are so qualified. You are so capable. And when they get home, that woman says, he didn't really mean that. I need you as women and as men, as allies and people that are here to support us, to talk to the young women in your life and say, you are capable, you can do it, you should do it, I can support you. They have to hear that from you more than once. So go and share that.
Thank you. Judge Huff.
We're at 6:30 and I'm the briefest one, I think. So I'm going to take that and say this. I think everyone has touched on pretty much everything you need to consider when you think about running for office. You will not be liked by everyone. You are going to say things that will offend some people. You're going to say things that people don't like. Say it anyway. You are going to make people mad for whatever reason because you're doing what you think is right. Do it anyway. The thing you can do to keep you in this game is you have to remember your why. Your why is your reason. And as long as you stay true to that, that's the one thing I got into campaigning and said, I will never let it change who I am at my core. And so who you get is who you get. That is Stephanie. And that's all you got to do. Remember your why, stay true to who you are, and do what you think is right at all times.
What a fabulous way to close, you know, the panel. Commissioner Daniels, do you want to add briefly something?
Couple things. First
Your
of
mic,
all,
your mic, Commissioner.
Oops. What's on? Constable, well, I'm looking at you. Gully walked in, so I want to recognize somebody else who has been through what it takes to run a campaign, because you are so right that we now belong to a club that not a lot of people belong to. When I walk into a room, I know that chances are good that I'm the only one who has been there, being an open book. Everything is out there on the line, and that our experience makes us different people. That's all there is to it. Just a couple of other little doodads, and that's my 2 laws. We do nothing by ourselves.
No.
And the second one is that we are not done yet.
That's correct.
And Martin Luther King said, and it is always the right time to do the right thing.
Exactly.
So go for it.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Dan. And now is our audience turn. You know, the mic is on. Mr. Romain, anyone that wants to come and ask a question to our panel? I see many of you and we're almost ready to close. So I know
Gordon has
Sylvia,
something.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Gordon Heichel.
I'm not answering any
You know,
questions from Gordon.
there
Heichel.
was- Yeah.
First of all, I want to say thanks to all of you for this discussion. The thing that really interested me is to hear all of you, but there's an issue here looming we call in the academic world the intersectionality between race, gender, and age. Mayor Pro Tem, you mentioned that our governor, I believe it was last month, said something about banning the consideration of hiring based on anything other than merit. So he doesn't see the diversity to be an issue of merit, which I totally disagree with. But my question to you is this. Where you are can be both a plus and a negative when you deal with all these intersectionalities, ageism, sexism, racism, and all those things. How do you navigate the world to make sure one is both a plus, at the same time dealing with the challenges of all these issues that intersect?
Mr. Heichel, is that for everybody in the panel or a specific member of our panel?
Whoever is brave enough to tell us how we, yes. Yeah. Mayor Pro-
Yeah, I had to think about that for a minute, but as Judge said, you know, I have to know, first of all, I know who I am. And I'm not going to, and you have to keep working on this stuff because there are days when you will hear things and it'll start to work on you. I'm telling you, that's the truth. And it's good to have people in your court. You know, if I know that I need to talk to someone, if she's available, I know I can call Ms. Pauline Madrano. I know that. And I know what she's done because she has the experience. She's come from the council. She was a deputy mayor pro tem and mayor pro tem. And now I know that I'm going to also start working with Ms. Elba Garcia because I now know we have an area jurisdiction in common, but to know you've been in this seat. And so I'm very confident in who I am. I don't, and all I want to do is make decisions that, and when I go home, I can sleep at night. I must be able to sleep at night. And so if you don't particularly like my strategy or way of doing things, I can take constructive, you know, conversations. But the bottom line is I know my assignment. I know who I am. I pray over that. I'm looking to do the right thing for people. And you're absolutely right. If you're not up at night on some of these issues, like I'm up now, even though it's a campaign season, you know, I'm struggling now. How are we sitting here allowing seniors to have their dilapidated structures? These are taxpayers who walking on dirt, the floor is gone. I had a conversation with a lady today. I went to talk to her because I heard she was mad at me. I'm like, let me go by there. But the bottom line is this. She's one of those many who filled an application out for housing. She's, 3 or 4 times, you're not getting any help, any response, we're running out of money. That bothers me because we're paying taxes on a dilapidated structure and they can't get help. And we have the funds to do that, and even though they're limited. So yes, it's the whole dynamics of children, the seniors, where we should be as a city. But for me, even though, as I've told you, I'm going through that now, but I knew when I got there, it's always some reason. It's something about, I guess, as they say, what we call a strong Black woman. I consider myself to be that, but it's just confident, where you're going to get hit from all sides. And so you just have to be not afraid to speak and be able, your research, know what you're talking about. You're just not talking to be talking. And then I've also had to learn too, I'm learning this to try to be a little bit brief. But as I spoke last week with a group of women from the Regional Chamber of Commerce who told me that they told us they were going to Austin to do this. And so you can't go to Austin just to be on the news, to be seen. You have a governor who came here and gave a state of the state address or whatever to the regional chamber to talk about the future of this state. And you're up here talking about turning back the hands of time. We've already been there. Some of us already know about this whole notion of quotas and all this other stuff. He forgot that he had got his seat because of that same policy, DEI, inclusion. And so we need to be, women should already be rallying up to get him I'm sorry, y'all, if I'm being taped. I'm sorry, but I'm not really sorry. To get him out of office. You know,
Okay.
so I don't mind saying that and I can take the heat for it, but the bottom line is that's all of everything that I'm dealing with. I know my assignment. I'm comfortable. I'm not going to let you break me down based on what your definition of who I should be. So I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And, Judge Hugh Clinton wants to, add something to this. And then Ms. Lagos, you will get the last question for our panel.
So, Mr. Heichel, in an interview that Sandra Day O'Connor had once, she was asked about Thurgood Marshall. And though they were appointed by different political parties, and though they had very vast differences, one of the things that Sandra Day O'Connor said about her tenure with Thurgood Marshall was how invaluable it was that she had him as one of the justices that she served with, because she was able to learn so much from him that was outside of her experiences, outside of her knowledge base. And so I think the first thing that we have to do is, in that question, throw out the assumption that those who say that diversity is anything other than a plus is just wrong. I think that's where we start. We don't accept that philosophy, that number one, that they're correct, and that diversity does anything other than add to the conversation. And that when we add diversity, that it is a betterment not only for the system, not only for those who get to sit at the table, but for the others who are also at the table, like Sandra Day O'Connor. And so I like to use that example because I think those are two people who have extremely unique points in history with that kind of very educated opinion that we should be learning from.
Excellent. Ms. Lagos, who is representing today Constable Michael Orozco.
Yes, thank you. My name is Sylvia Lagos, and I do work for Constable Michael Orozco. He's one of the best bosses I've ever had. And the reason I say that, I don't just say it because I say it, because I'm very difficult sometimes. I say that because I am currently in a leadership program with Dallas County, and I think it is the best thing for me. My life has always been backwards. I grew up young, but with a lot of responsibility. So I did not have the opportunities that I have today. Today, I was going to throw in the towel, not because of my boss or anything in my office, but because another Dallas County office. I was going to throw in the towel. I said, I'm done with it. I'm going to leave here and I'm going to raise heck. I'm going to be a rebel and I'm going to change, what needs to be changed. But then someone talked some sense into me. And then I come here today and hear you. And it reaffirms that I need to be where I am because I know who I am. And I know that fighting is in me. That's who I am. The justice. I believe in justice. I believe in seeing the citizens of Dallas County being given the best service that they can be given. And all I want to say is from the bottom of my heart, I love each and every one of you for what you're doing. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you very much for what I heard today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lagos. And with that, I just want to thank Mr. Aaron White for being in charge of our IT and everything that worked today. Thank you, Mr. White. I see you in the back. And with that, thank you to our panelists.
Can we take a picture?
Yes, but first I'm going to give the mic to our director, Chief Equity of Inclusion Office Director, Mr. Jason, to close it, Commissioner, and thank all of you.